All right. Welcome and good morning, everyone. I'm Archie Rook, a junior at Colgate University, double majoring in international relations and Spanish. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's event for the opportunity to raise awareness about the high impact of subnational diplomacy, as well as the opportunities and challenges presented by international work at the state, city, and non-governmental levels. It's my hope that this discussion will set about building a potential framework for promoting future subnational leaders to consider applying for ICAP. At this time, I would like to give a special thank you to the International Career Advancement Program, ICAP, and the ICAP Fellows Association for their unwavering support and guidance throughout my internship and the planning process of my capstone project. Now, please join me in welcoming our panelists. Today, we are joined by several subnational diplomatic actors who shortly we'll be able to hear from and who will be able to provide insight into international affairs work at the subnational level. Towards the end of the event, we'll be having a question and answer session, so please use this time to prepare your questions and ensure your display name is accurate. Before I talk a bit more about the premise of today's discussion and turn it over to our panelists, I'd like to introduce them briefly. First, representing subnational diplomatic actors at the state level, please join me in welcoming Ms. Shannon Shellenberg, Director of the California State Senate Office of International Relations. Ms. Shellenberg is charged with all protocol and program planning for visiting foreign dignitaries to the Senate, as well as the organization and staffing of all official Senate delegations abroad. And next, from the perspective of subnational actors in US cities, welcome Ms. Stephanie Garnica, Director of Global Business Development at Denver's Economic Development and Opportunity Office. Ms. Garnica is responsible for the creation and execution of initiatives that elevate Denver's reputation as an epicenter of global business, as well as attracting foreign direct investment and diversifying the international business community. Next up, we have Ms. Valarie J. McCall, current founder of Valarie McCall Consulting Agency and former Chief of Communications, Government, and International Affairs for the City of Cleveland. Ms. McCall served as the primary representative for Sister Cities International during her time as a cabinet member in the administration of Cleveland's longest-serving mayor, Frank G. Jackson. And lastly, we have Ms. Rachel Page, offering insight into non-state actors in coalition building. Ms. Page is the Deputy Director at Go Global NC and their Chief Operating Officer for the North Carolina Coalition for Global Competitiveness. In addition to internal organizational oversight, building statewide alliances, and strategic planning, Ms. Page is also responsible for working to make North Carolina the most globally engaged state in the nation. I want to, once again, thank all of our panelists for the crucial work you're doing and for taking part in this important discussion. Now, before we begin with your opening remarks, I want to frame our discussion in the context of the work surrounding my capstone project. This summer, in coordination with the ICAP Fellows Association and the Institute for Responsible Citizenship, I've had the distinct pleasure of researching the complexities and nuances of US foreign diplomacy. In conducting said research, I began investigating the extent and roles that leaders in subnational diplomacy occupy as key contributors to the international affairs workforce. And I found that the reach includes all large economy cities and states, starting with those that host diplomatic representation. So for the purposes of today's discussion, subnational diplomacy and subnational work has been identified as the network of complex cultural, economic, business, diaspora, and government-to-government relationships that sustain international affairs work at the city and state levels. By juxtaposing the national foreign affairs apparatus with the work of subnational leaders, this work aims to further substantiate the justification for investing in, recruiting, retaining, and advancing diverse talent at the subnational and federal levels through the potential for a future ICAP partnership. As a result, in support of the literature on cooperative federalism and in conjunction with recent publications from the Brookings Institution and the Truman Center, I was called to the topic of subnational diplomacy by its potential to redefine the international affairs workforce. Although US cities and states may not engage in international treaties as active parties, their role as norm sustainers can help to advance and heighten international ambition on certain global issues. So as we prepare to examine this evolving body of knowledge, we're going to begin now with opening remarks from our panelists. These are on the record, and in this component, speakers will have 5 minutes to provide a brief overview of their relevant subnational positions, professional responsibilities, and the mandates of their offices. So without further ado, please join me in giving a warm virtual welcome to our esteemed panelists, as I will pass it over to Ms. Shannon Shellenberg for her introductory remarks. Ms. Shellenberg?
Great, thank you very much, Archie. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank you and the Institute for Responsible Citizenship Washington program for the invitation to participate here today. It's a great opportunity to connect with IR professionals, especially after what's been such a difficult and transitionary time for our Senate IR program over this last 2.5 years with the pandemic, moving from many of our in-person activities, which are really the crux of our work and the human connection part of our work, and moving into this virtual space, which is wonderful and allows us in a way to communicate across borders in a way we haven't been able to before. I hope we can keep the great parts of it, like these types of events, but also move back to our in-person activities. Because California is on the other side of the country, even though we have a large and diverse state with a huge global impact and also impacted globally, we're not always as connected as we should be, I think, to our federal partners across the country. So I am, as Archie said, the director of the Senate Office of International Relations. I took over this leadership role in January, but I've worked with the office for the last 24 years. Our office is, as he said, a protocol and programming office for the Senate, started in 1987. So there would be a locus for international visitors and the international community in California to reach out to the Senate. We act as a liaison to that community. Our job is really to build relationships and to help our members, our legislators, make the best policy decisions in a state of 40 million people, 27% of whom are foreign born. So we work to plan incoming programs. Pre-pandemic, we would have about 1,200 to 1,400 visitors coming in a year, and we're connecting them to our members and our staff and others in the Sacramento policy community and across the state on issues of public policy importance. In addition to that, we also arrange outgoing programs for our senators, allowing them to have missions related to public policy issues of importance and interest, in traveling to places that might have similar challenges, looking at best practices. So it's really about, on the incoming side, providing the protocol so that visitors have the experience in our state that we want them to have. And also on the outgoing side, to have member education and expansion of their public policy views so that they can make the best decisions. Our office is very involved in creating long-term relationships through individual projects, through sister state relationships. We just in fact celebrated the 25th anniversary of our sister state with New South Wales, Australia, and had a delegation here of their leaders. It's been a great exchange over many years, as New South Wales and California share a lot of great things in common with our beautiful states and our gold rush history, our ag production, but we also share some very difficult challenges in terms of drought and wildfires. Recently, those are getting worse with climate change, and so that's a very productive exchange. Lastly, we act as a liaison for the Consular Corps in California. Because we are on the other side of the country, we have over 170 consulates here in California, mainly focused in San Francisco and Los Angeles, but a few spread all across the state. And I know that lastly, ICAP is interested in diversity and inclusion in the IR profession. And while we have a very small office and not a lot of turnover, the Senate has a very active diversity and inclusion program. And one of the things that our office works on is making sure that all the different communities in California, not just expatriate communities, but communities who have lived here for a long time. We have some of the largest communities outside of their home country in California, making sure that they're acknowledged and included in our public policy process. So my background is I am an international relations major, graduated from UC Davis. I did an internship in this office actually when I was at UC Davis many years ago. So that's a little shout out for internships and fellowships. They're so important for career development. And I worked in private sector hospitality. I studied Japanese, and in the period that I graduated, there were a lot of Japanese visiting Hawaii. So I worked there for 3 years, but my passion was really government, and my concentration was US foreign policy. I thought that I would go into the Foreign Service, maybe, and be serving on the side of the country where ICAP is. However, I had this opportunity upon moving back to California to work in this office. And it's wonderful. I have the opportunity to represent my home state, which I love so much, and yet work in the international relations field. So with that, I know I'm over time already. Archie, I just want to say thank you again for the chance to be with you. And I look forward to hearing from the other panelists and engaging in a discussion. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Shellenberg. And with that, I will pass it over to Ms. Garnica.
Thank you so much, Archie. I appreciate you putting this together. It's nice to be part of such a distinguished group of panelists, and fun to hear how everyone's position is set up within their respective community. As Archie mentioned, my name is Stephanie Garnica, and I'm the Director of Global Business Development Efforts for the City and County of Denver, Colorado. And I am located within the Denver Economic Development and Opportunity Office. And what's unique about our office is that being a traditional economic development group within the city government, we do have traditional economic development, business development, attraction, expansion, retention. So helping both local companies, helping local companies grow and expand their operations here. We have a workforce development team. We have a neighborhood equity stabilization team, which really all of our different divisions within our office do have a equity, diversity, inclusivity focus, but they have a more direct mandate to really focus on underserved communities in different neighborhoods that might be experiencing growth challenges. So they're also located within our office. And then we have a division of small business operations. And then the remaining division is the one that I lead, which is global business development. So all of our different divisions combined are all about equitable, inclusive economic development for the residents of our community, for the different neighborhoods, for different industry verticals. And it does resonate and go a long way with the international business community that I primarily work with. And just a few comments before I get into that. Ms. Shellenberg mentioned the consular corps that they have in California, which many of those consular representatives actually serve the state of Colorado as part of their jurisdiction. So we are fortunate to receive many visitors from a lot of those consular offices that do provide services to their residents in Colorado. And some of them even have a trade and investment, kind of more of the commercial economic division to them. So that means that they're also trying to help promote bilateral trade and investment with all the states in the region that they cover with their home country. So we do receive a lot of visitors from a lot of those different diplomats that are located in California, which is wonderful. So One thing that I think is interesting about Denver is that prior to 4 years ago, we actually did not have a team focused on international business efforts. So it wasn't to say that the city wasn't focused on that, but there really wasn't a cohesive group of people dedicated to just that. Within our city government, outside of the economic development agency that I work for, we have Human Rights and Community Partnerships, which is a city agencies that does work, among other things, with some of the different diasporas here. There are many in Colorado. I would say it's probably based on our geographic location within the US, but also the industries that we're strong in. We have a large Latin American community here, primarily from Mexico and Central America. We also have a large African diaspora here, many people from different African countries. So the Human Rights Community Partnership is more focused on helping all the different diasporas and groups of people have access to services, feel welcomed and integrated into the community. We have performing arts and venues, which is more of the arts and cultural side, of which there are many international initiatives. But to actually have a team of people in place that focuses on more of the diplomatic international relations, working with our own local consular corps. So we have about 35 countries represented here through our Consular Corps of Colorado, and then working with the international business people that are coming here, that are already here, helping get them connected and integrated into our community. If they're hosting visitors, if they're hosting diplomats from their home country, if they need access to the mayor, which is who I report to, making sure that there was a seamless and easy process to be able to access some of those people and get plugged into what's happening here in our own community. So long story that I'll try and quickly conclude here, but that's really what our team does. So we are the team that when we were established 4 years ago, we took a really comprehensive look at what are our city's global assets? What does it mean to be a global city? And so what we looked at were, where are the nonstop destinations served out of our airport? What are the different foreign-born communities that have a significant representation here? Which cities around the world does Denver have a sister city relationship with? The Consular Corps, what countries are represented? Where are our international business people coming from? Where are our companies exporting to, or where do they have a presence around the world? And how do we capture all of that? We worked with academia as well. Where do our higher educational institutes have students from, and where are they sending their students to? And then a lot of bilateral and globally focused chambers of commerce. So we really took an in-depth look to evaluate and inventory what our global footprint looks like, to be able to then build upon that as we explored what our primary function is, which is attracting foreign investment into Denver. But in order to do that well, we really needed to understand the makeup of our own community so that we could provide meaningful introductions, connections, point people in the right direction. So that's what our team does as the city's global business development team. I've been in this role for 4 years since this division was established. Prior to that, I actually worked at Denver International Airport in business development, helping attract new nonstop flights to serve our community. So I've been in the international economic development world for quite a while. I worked for our state government for 14 years as well. So it's been fun to see the global growth of our city, of our community. It's been fun to see Denver get more on a worldwide map. And I look forward to learning what the colleagues on this call do and how we can all integrate and work more closely together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Garnica. I'd like to now pass it on to Ms. McCall.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I would like to echo my colleagues' notes of thank you for including us in this great panel, and Archie for your work of putting this together. I'm going to start by just giving you a little bit about my background. I have worked in local government, specifically for the city of Cleveland, for the last 23.5 years. And I always joke and say I started when I was 2 years old. For those of you who are asking, I actually started, I was hired by Mayor Michael R. White, who at that time had been the longest serving mayor in the city of Cleveland. He hired me to run the city of Cleveland's Empowerment Zone office. And for those of you who remember, that was a federally designated grant of which Cleveland was one of the recipients. I believe Cleveland and LA were what they call supplemental empowerment zones. but we still got all the benefits. So I had an opportunity to be the director of that division. From there, I worked for the first 5 months of Jane Campbell's administration. She's the first female mayor of the city of Cleveland. While she was mayor, my former boss was the council president. And so I served as the youngest city clerk of city council for the city of Cleveland. And then he ran against Jane Campbell and won. And then he became the longest serving mayor. And during that time, I served as his initially chief of government and international affairs, and then later on chief of communications, government and international affairs. And that's important because I want to point out that from the onset of Mayor Jackson's administration, international relations and international affairs was at the forefront of importance to him. Ironically, I have 2 honorary doctors. I have one from Cleveland State University, and I also have one from the University of Normandy in Normandy, France. And so that's a high honor. And that comes directly from our relationship with our sister city in Rouen, France. And so as we're here today and we're talking about the partnerships that local government have and the subnational diplomacy, it is very, very important. So this is personal to me. I used to tell people, if you really want to see, we used to say the United States is a melting pot, and you want to see what that melting pot looks like, come to Cleveland, Ohio, because Cleveland and the state of Ohio is a great example of that melting pot. And I'm sure we all can say that about our respective communities, and you can see that from the other panelists here. So Cleveland is very, very active in the international community. When Mayor Jackson first took office, a lot of people came to him and said, Mayor, we want you to open up an office of welcoming in City Hall. And he said, no, because I want to start something that lives beyond City Hall, that no matter who becomes mayor, the international community understands that they have a place to go. And so we formed an organization called Global Cleveland. We just celebrated the 10-year anniversary. I believe this is our 11th year. And it was started by the city of Cleveland, Cuyahoga County, a local philanthropist named Mr. Albert Ratner, who used to run for City Enterprises, Huntington Bank, and the Cleveland Foundation. And we seeded this organization so that no matter who runs the office, that this location and this organization will be there. Like most of you, we have obviously, in my office at the time, used to oversee our sister cities international programs, all of our foreign dignitary and our Cleveland, what we call our council court, where your honorary counselors, our vice councils, we meet monthly. We opened up City Hall. We would host any international event for free. We never charged. Obviously, my office was in charge of greeting any dignitaries that came along, with staffing the mayor for those. Most recently, the last, under the Trump administration, ambassador to Ireland was Mr. Eddie Crawford, a local person from the greater Cleveland area. Cleveland is home to a unique, what we call cultural gardens. I think we may be the only one in the nation where we actually have a garden that was left to us from the Rockefeller family. And that garden is dedicated to highlighting the international community. The most recent garden that will go up, that will go in will be the French garden, the French American garden. And so it's a beautiful place. It's representative of each community, and it's probably one of a kind in this world. I know you saw, or I think somewhere it was mentioned that I was inducted into the Cleveland International Hall of Fame, which is actually a very prestigious honor. I believe I am the youngest person inducted in there and the first African-American female inducted. And so that was started by a family who runs an organization called Cleveland.com. And anything international in the state of Ohio, specifically in Cleveland, if you go to Cleveland.com, ClevelandPeople.com, you can find out anything you need to know about internationalism in the city of Cleveland. We've always had a phenomenal working relationship with our international community. We have the Cleveland Council on World Affairs that is actually ran by a former ambassador. And we also have, in addition to our office in Global Cleveland, we talk about the subnational partnership and diplomacy. We take ours very seriously. We have over 23 international sister cities, and our office at the time, I'm sure this is still the case under the Bibb administration, paid the dues for all of those sister cities, because I don't know if most of you know, and if you don't know, each of those partnerships have to pay a membership fee to Sister Cities International. Our administration covered that fee. And so we didn't want the community organizations to have to worry about that. So outside of the country of Slovenia, Northeast Ohio and Cleveland is home to, I believe we joke and say there are more Slovenians who live in Cleveland and Northeast Ohio than in Slovenia. And that's important because our mayor was the first sitting mayor to go and visit Slovenia. And so again, I highlight that because of our partnerships. And then one little final point that I'll leave, I think you all have heard of Cleveland Clinic. Our sister city with France did not get actually officially dedicated until Mayor Jackson came into office. One of the first meetings I had was with the French American Chamber of Commerce, and they came to us and said, hey, we have this partnership. We recognize you and Rouen, France as twins, sister cities, but it's never been documented. Well, come to find out, there's a hospital there called University Hospitals. There's a hospital here called University Hospital. If you go in Hotel de Ville at City Hall, there's a plaque dedicated to the Lakeside unit. That Lakeside unit came from Cleveland, Ohio, University Hospitals. If you walk into University Hospitals, there's a row there called the Lakeside unit. And it's in honor of all the doctors and nurses and everybody who served in Normandy. Three or four of the doctors who were part of University Hospitals at the time serving in Normandy, when they came back to the United States and they came back to Cleveland, they founded the Cleveland Clinic. And so not only do we have strong roots, obviously, in the international space, we have it in medicine as well. And so I'll pause there because I could go on and on, but I know we want to get into some of the dialogue. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCall. Ms. Page.
Well, thank you. That's quite a... I did unmute myself. All right, can you hear me now? I hope so. So thank you. That's such a tough act to follow, and I'm really happy to be here today and be able to talk a little bit about North Carolina and the work we have going on here. And I'm also very excited to learn from my fellow panelists about the different ways that they work with subnational diplomacy. I've been interested in the topic for at least the past 3 years, and I'm not sure how long it's been. I mean, it's been around for ages, but I'm so glad to see it getting more attention and more limelight because it's such a great part of my life that I really enjoy. So I'm Rachel Page. I'm the Deputy Director of a small nonprofit here in North Carolina called Go Global NC. We were founded in 1979 by Governor Hunt, and we really are an organization that focuses on working with leaders across the state to help them become more globally engaged. So I like to say that we focus on business, education, government, and the community. Since 1979, we've taken more than 10,000 North Carolinians abroad. We've hosted more than 5,000 guests here, international visitors here in North Carolina, and we visited over 52 countries, some of them multiple times. So we do a variety of different programs, but the one that I'm here to talk to you all about today is called the North Carolina Coalition for Global Competitiveness. So the North Carolina Coalition, I'll just refer to it as the coalition, is a group of 60 leaders, again, in business, education, government, and the community across North Carolina that help shape and guide global policy for North Carolina. So how can we be the most globally engaged state in the nation? A lofty vision for sure. And we do that by connecting traditionally siloed groups. So how does education interface with business? How does business interface with the government? How does the community, how do they all interact together? Often we see very siloed plans within each industry and not bridging them. So together, we've been able to address different ways of having from the cradle through the career an approach. One other tidbit about the formation of the coalition. So it was founded by former Secretary of Commerce Jim Fain in 2013. Then it was the Coalition of the Willing, and it was a little less structured. I was brought on in 2014 to help create structure. And one of the first things we did was talk about what does global engagement even mean? And how do you find a common definition of something that we all think we know, but when we're talking about it across sectors, really had to work harder at it. So we did a series of about 250 surveys for leaders in the international arena in North Carolina. 50 one-on-one interviews with former governors, former secretaries, Department of Commerce, Department of Transportation, Secretary of States, et cetera, and 6 regional focus groups to really talk about what is global engagement, and if we were to drive policy within it, what would that structure and framework look like? And so in 2015, we created the North Carolina Blueprint for Global Engagement, and then we updated it more recently in 2020. And in our 2020 edition, we highlight 5 areas of strategic focus. So leadership, obviously essential to have. Infrastructure and logistics. So how do we get things from our ports through our highways, through our railways? How do we get broadband across our state and have people access broadband? Global economic development, I think that kind of speaks for itself, but it's a very, very important element of being globally engaged. Cross-cultural competence, so within this realm, we also include all of our K through 12 students and world languages and study abroad and international students and whatnot. And then last but not least, communications and partnerships. So how do we communicate with each other, both about the work that we're doing, how do we communicate across sectors, and then how do we build partnerships, because it really comes down to partnerships. 2 things I'll say before I pass on is that we have, we're co-chaired by Secretary of State Elaine Marshall and our Commissioner of Agriculture, Steve Troxler. So we're a bipartisan group, and that really has been essential to us being able to navigate and find successful wins across the state of North Carolina and find common ground. And then the second thing I'll say is that if anybody is in North Carolina or anywhere near around, that I welcome the conversation and opportunity to continue this discussion with you, ideally in person. So I'll yield my time back here and happy to be here today.
Thank you so much for sharing that information with us, Ms. Page. Now, as we begin to prepare for our first round of questioning, I would like to acknowledge that this concludes the recorded portion of the event. The following is not for attribution, after which we will move to the first off-the-record question of the roundtable discussion, where panelists will have 5 minutes of allotted time to respond to questions posed to them directly, and an additional 1 to 2 minutes reserved for brief commentary on all of their questions.